The African Union has issued an official communique that Ethiopia and the Tigray region have agreed to end fighting after talks in South Africa. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo on Wednesday said Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan authorities agreed on orderly, smooth and coordinated disarmament along with restoration of law and order. For more on this, we are now joined by Africa-Asia Dialogue Director Thembisa Fakude. Thembisa, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. Now, the ceasefire announcement has been welcomed as a breakthrough moment, with the African Union describing it as a new dawn. But the welcome has been taken cautiously, as this isn't the first ceasefire agreement during this conflict.
Yes, that's true, and one hopes that it will hold. But what's concerning, of course, is that one of the actors who've been involved in this conflict, which is Eritrea, they were not part of these negotiations. So that is of great concern to the negotiators, but also to just the people of Ethiopia. What will happen now between the Eritreans and TPLF, who have not who are yet to sign an agreement regarding peaceful transition moving forward.
Of course, as you mentioned, that Eritrea, who played a very big part in this conflict, was not involved in these peace talks, but it also speaks to other forces from the Ethiopian regions that were also part of this war on the side of Ethiopia. Would it not be the responsibility of the Ethiopian authorities to then convince the Eritreans, as well as these other forces from the other regions, to agree to this truce?
Yeah, well, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has an upper hand at the moment. He's one of the few who can, for example, go and speak to the people of Amhara region who are also involved in this conflict. He can also speak to Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea in terms of them, stopping the fight in Tigray. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. But I think it's a great step that at least TPLF has signed an arrangement or an agreement with the government. This will see cessation of hostilities, but importantly, guarantee the safe passage of goods and aid, which is desperately needed in the Tigray region.
Most certainly. I mean, you make mention of Prime Minister Ahmed, and earlier on he accused the USA of being biased in the peace talks. What was the role of the USA in the war, and what was the impact, if there was any?
Well, the USA has been very critical of Abiy Ahmed, and there's been a spat, to and fro spat between the two. USA, of course, accusing Abiy Ahmed and his government of atrocities in Tigray. So that has created a problem. But one hopes that now that we've got this peace, there will be some sort of cessation of those hostile rhetoric that has been taking place between the two nations. So the USA's role in Ethiopia has been that of criticizing what's been going on in Ethiopia, and at some point actually seen to be siding with the TPLF. So we'll hope that they will be part of the efforts of ensuring that this is a successful and peaceful transition towards normalization in TPLF after the signing of that agreement in South Africa.
Most certainly. Now, Tigray would fall under Ethiopia in a manner consistent with the constitution of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, meaning that the area would be under Ahmed's administration instead of the breakaway state that Tigray had wanted. What were some of the concessions made in the peace talks?
Well, they've never come out openly to say they wanted their own state, but of course their actions indicated that they wanted more autonomy. And the reason why they wanted more autonomy is to, as I said last week when we had this interview, was to shield some of the generals who are accused of human rights and corruption in Ethiopia. As you remember, TPLF was part of the coalition that led Ethiopia for some time. So we'll have to see. I think they've never been openly for a state independent of Ethiopia, but they wanted more autonomous powers. But I think this agreement will force them, one, to disarm, which, as you know, at the moment they are heavily armed. So I think Abiy Ahmed, who is on the upper hand again, because, again, the TPLF was forced into these negotiations, not because of anything else, but because they had a very serious and a strong pushback from the Ethiopian National Defense Force. So they will have to disarm, and they will also have to have elections, because remember those elections were not recognized by the federal government of 2020, which by the way, triggered the conflict because TPLF went ahead with the elections, notwithstanding that the federal government said they were supposed to be suspended due to COVID-19. So two things that I think will happen after the cessation of hostility. One will be a process of disarming the TPLF forces. Two is the initiation of second round of election in Tigray, since the current government is not recognized by the federal government in Addis Ababa.
So, Thembisa, what's the scale of work that needs to be done to recover from the impact of this conflict?
There's a lot to be done, including, rebuilding national cohesion. But at the same time, I don't think Abiy Ahmed will leave his initial project, which was fighting corruption and making sure that those people that were accused of human rights way before he came into power in 2018 are held to account. But I think there's also going to be some silent moves to try and pacify TPLF forces and making sure that even in future they don't even think about resuming the conflict, because we're still not sure what will happen. Eritrea might just continue with the war, so there's that process as well that has to be started in earnest. Whether Abiy Ahmed will want to see Eritrea putting down their arms, because it will serve him to put pressure on the TPLF should they decide to start fighting again. So I think Eritrea is likely to serve Abiy Ahmed moving forward, but there will be continual discussions, particularly those seeking to foster some sort of national cohesion after a 2-year war that has been very devastating to not only the economy but to the just social-political situation in Ethiopia.
Most certainly. Thank you so much for your time. That was Thembisa Fakude, the Director of Africa-Asia Dialogue, discussing the peace agreements between the warring parties, being the Tigray region and Ethiopia. Thank you so much for that input this evening.